My fellow Americans,
let's talk about the situation at the border. We've seen a huge surge in migrants crossing the border since January. The number of children in custody higher than it was than its 2019 peak during the Trump administration. Your colleague Veronica Escobar of Texas called the conditions there unacceptable. She was there on Friday. Is she right? What more must be done?
Actually, the facts are these. There are more children, about 600-700 more children, unaccompanied children, coming over the border. This is a humanitarian challenge to all of us. What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border, and they are working to correct that in the children's interest. I'm so pleased that the president, as a temporary measure, has sent FEMA to the border in order to help facilitate the children going from one 72-hour issue into where they are cared for as they are transferred into family homes or homes that are safe for them to be.
And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021, when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. My husband is a combat veteran. He's deployed now. The last thing I want him or any of his military brothers and sisters to do is to go to war.
But I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
One of the reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support.
American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
A U.S. official has confirmed to CBS News President Biden has given authorization for Kyiv to use U.S.-supplied long-range weapons to strike deep into Russian territory.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not has no interest in
You won't answer the question about whether or not that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you.
British police came into the embassy and arrested.
After a long flight from the UK, Julian Assange's day began on the island of Saipan, a tiny territory chosen because it's the closest US court to Australia. This normally quiet courthouse, swarming with reporters, as the WikiLeaks founder arrived flanked by former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
So what is the threat to democracy? People on both sides, people in power, saying out loud that they want to control what you get to hear and see. It is real, it is a threat, and it is happening and growing. And I'll tell you what, punishing thought is on the agenda. And I just heard it from someone who's not a kook, not Alex Jones, not Tucker Carlson, one of the most sober and intelligent politicians of our time, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I think it's important to indict the Russians, just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrent.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to censor content, including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it."
You know, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, you know, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in awe of Ms. Jankowicz. When the department picked her, did it know that she had said that Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation? Did it know that she had vouched for the veracity of the Steele dossier?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add an additional fact. One, we do not discuss internal hiring processes.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech.
To be a conspiracy theorist is to have been right all along, despite the efforts of the paid-for liars. And it's also to be demonstrably well ahead of the gullible, still believing in smoke and mirrors. Conspiracy theorist was first used by the CIA to shut down those who doubted the official line about the murder of John F. Kennedy, that fishy old tale about a lone shooter and a magic bullet, and then that lone shooter being shot by another lone shooter before he could talk. That was in the 1960s, and from then, the label conspiracy theorist worked for decades as the means to make thinking people too scared to speak when they smelt a rat. Let 2024 be the year of clearing out the rubbish, the trash, the long overdue year when the past or sell-by-date labels, conspiracy theorist among them, are cast into the dustbin of history.
Welcome, everyone, to Redacted on this Monday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
So glad to have you here, even though we are a bit late today because of massive technical difficulties, some sort of massive outage, not only with Zoom, but like all sorts of services. So anyway, hey, welcome in. It's a full moon on this Monday. Coming up on today's show, we are going to deep dive what is going on with Israel as President Trump gets ready and set to head to the Middle East. Why is Benjamin Netanyahu being edged out of the picture? And it seems like the mainstream media is changing its tune as well, coming around on this, now calling out genocide in Gaza. Like multiple mainstream news organizations are saying, hey, why did the West step back and not call out this genocide in Gaza? Why are the mainstream media finally coming around on this?
It's perplexing, right? Absolutely perplexing. So we're going to break that down. We're also going to talk about how Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, has realized there is a thing called being British. There is a thing called actual British culture. All of a sudden, he thinks that's okay. He thinks that he needs to create limits to mass migration. He says he wants to stop the experimentation on mass migration. Way to wake up. What's happening, Clayton, is that world leaders are saying the absolute obvious. It's like that Captain Obvious commercial.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Plus, we're going to talk about George Soros has been linked to a number of these illegal immigration plans in NGOs inside the United States. This is shocking. We're going to go through that as well today. We're going to talk about that and so much more. Plus, Trump's prescription drug plan, slashing prices by up to 80%. We'll talk about all of that and more. But first, let's talk about our friends over at Black Forest Supplements, because cocoa flavanols have insane health benefits. Did you know that? I'm talking about boosting nitric oxide, improving heart health, regenerative brain cells. Listen right here to world-renowned scientist from Harvard, Dr. William Lee, explain it. Watch. Oh, we don't have it? Oh, there it goes. Oh, there's no sound. Okay. Oh, we're missing the... Okay, we don't have it, unfortunately. Hey, it's that kind of day. It's that kind of day today. We don't have it. So dark chocolate, here's the thing. Flavanols are the good stuff found in cocoa beans. They're usually destroyed during the chocolate making process. That's where Black Forest Supplements comes in. And right now, it's not just any old cocoa. It's the stem cell powder. It's a stem cell power up. If you are experiencing significant aging, slow recovery, weak immunity, blame your lazy stem cells. So right now, you get 40% off store-wide for the next 48 hours, including cocoa. I highly recommend you guys go ahead right now and check it out. Go to blackforestsupplements.com/redacted. Get 40% off for the next 48 hours. blackforestsupplements.com/redacted.
All right. Well, Gates Royale in the chat says... This is a wild full moon. Absolutely, it is a full moon, and we don't know what's going on with our software, so we apologize. We're a little rough around the edges today, but we wanted to do a show because we prepared for it. It's a big news day. I'm having a good hair day. We have to go live, so thank you for joining us.
It was her choice.
Thank you for your patience.
We got to cancel the show. We got to cancel the show today.
Oh, thank you for the close-up on my hair.
We have all sorts of issues today, so...
I washed and blow-dried my hair. Yeah, and I see other people saying that Moats TV had an outage. It's just, this is the day. Okay, I don't feel so bad, but we have news to get to. So the Trump administration went around the Israeli government and negotiated the release of a hostage that has dual citizenship. This person has Israeli and American passports. Never was there a better ad for holding an American passport than the fact that Israel has left this person to die, and the Trump administration cannot abide this. Now, reports are that the Netanyahu regime is not happy with this. They were left out of the negotiation, and Steve Witkoff, the envoy to President Trump, is saying Israel is just not even trying. They're not trying to get their people back. Of course, we've reported that for months now, that Israel is not trying to release the hostages. And in fact, that the Palestinian offer was always all for all, because Israel has hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. That's what Hamas wanted, was the release of those people. And Israel continues to pee in the pool, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and so this all comes as multiple reports say that Trump is finished with Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, you saw this kind of happening over the weekend. Like, wait a second, is the Trump administration starting to really edge out the Netanyahu regime? Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, is wildly unliked right now in Israel. And Steve Witkoff saying that they want to continue this war. Continuing this war keeps Netanyahu in power. I'm telling you, a few weeks ago, of course, we reported here on the show that Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump are not friends. President Trump does not like Benjamin Netanyahu.
What's to like?
According to sources inside the White House, that has been the case. And I swear to God, I had a feeling this was going to happen. Not that I'm like a soothsayer, but I'm telling you, when Netanyahu starts to steal President Trump's thunder on a routine basis, like when President Trump in the middle of the night, so it's the middle of the night, and Netanyahu releases these video messages basically praising the Trump administration for their alignment with Israel. And then you wake up on the East Coast of the United States, and these video messages have been released by Netanyahu at like 4 a.m, so they don't have a chance to respond.
Yeah.
It makes President Trump look foolish on a number of different levels. And I think Scott Ritter nailed it when he says that basically the reason that this is a problem for Israel is because President Trump is a narcissist. So look at this. He said, Israel is the greatest single threat to the United States, a cancer that has disguised itself as part of the American body. America should be grateful that we elected a narcissist like Donald Trump as president. So think about that for a second. Because, let's be honest, Donald Trump is a narcissist. We know this.
Yeah, he thinks he got the Pope elected.
Yes, but this is the reason this is a big deal, that he's a narcissist, because that means that if you insult or sort of upstage him in a way,
or his administration,
then what you're doing is you're going to get a big middle finger. You're going to be edged out and boxed out. And that's exactly what happened in these hostage negotiations, that Israel wasn't invited to it. They haven't been a party to it. They're being pushed out. And then suddenly the mainstream media, I'm talking this morning, The Guardian, the Financial Times, all suddenly saying that the West should be ashamed of itself for not calling out the genocide in Gaza and what Israel has done in Gaza. Like,
way to catch up. Yeah. How did this happen almost 2 years later, almost 2 years of death?
Yes.
They've been able to abide, but now there's a red line. What is that? And in fact, even today, I almost fell out of my chair. Cindy McCain, the wife of John McCain, who wanted a war with Iran, on behalf of Israel. He wanted a war with Iran so bad he couldn't even stand it. And now Cindy McCain is saying that we have this aid, because she's a representative for the United Nations, I believe, saying we've been sitting on this aid and people are starving. We should all be ashamed of ourselves. So even legacy warmongers are saying that this is enough. Now we can collectively say we're starving these people. This is collective punishment. Now, over the weekend, the new Pope Leo called out the starvation of these people in Gaza. He said that humanitarian aid must reach them. Israel said we can't, because these civilians are mixing with Hamas. So by that definition, if in your town there are terrorists or bad people or whatever, and you might have mixed with them, exchanged a straw or something like that, at the little drink station, handed somebody something, then we should all starve. We should all be treated like this, right? By that definition, they're mixing with. What were you going to say?
No, I'm just saying, so a lot of people in the chat say, yes, he is a narcissist. Others saying, Karen Q says, sick of you, Redacted, calling the president a narcissist. By the way, those were Scott Ritter's words. Those were not our words. But I think he's clearly, even Tucker Carlson called it out. He's a guy who talks about big crowd size, definitely is aware of his television presence.
Well,
I mean, maybe he's not a narcissist.
That word in and of itself implies that you can't have love for other people before yourself. And I would say Donald Trump has a large ego and cares very much about perception. I don't know if, it rises to the level of clinical narcissism where he can't love other people. If that's what you would object to, we have no business clinically diagnosing him as a narcissist. So point taken.
Yeah. Okay. So others are saying, oh, he's absolutely not a narcissist. Either way, it doesn't matter. He doesn't want Netanyahu upstaging him and setting the tone and tenor of these of any of this, hostage negotiations or otherwise. And so you have the Trump administration have just pushed them out of the conversation. We are not involved in this conversation. Israel is not involved in this hostage release conversation. We're going to do it in other ways. He's flying to the Middle East with a lot on his plate right now, as Ron Paul wrote this morning. He's got a crap show that he's dealing with now in the Middle East. He's got Saudi Arabia, who aligned themselves with Iran and formalized a ceasefire and peace agreement together, and basically brought relations back together between the two of them. He's got the Houthis, who, of course, the Trump administration is trying to put forward this idea that their show of force brought them to the table, and now they don't want to fight anymore. It wasn't that at all. In fact, as Ron Paul pointed out, basically the Trump administration had to retreat from that because it was a failure.
Right.
That's what's happened. So he's going to the Middle East right now with a total crap show in front of him. What can he possibly pull out of that?
Let's not forget that it's not that Israel made Trump look like a puppet, which is also true. Netanyahu threatened him. He gave him a pager, which is what they use to blow up senior officials in Lebanon. So to give somebody a weapon as a warning, I don't see that as anything other than an unveiled threat. So I think that President Trump has always known. I mean, even if his personality aside, I think a lot of people voted for him thinking he won't be pushed around by Netanyahu, which we have clear reports now that the Biden administration was, that Biden was a puppet of Israel, the same way that the Obama administration was, the same way that many seniors in the first Trump administration were. So what we're watching for now as the hostage becomes released, which there are images of him today. He's supposedly returning to New Jersey within the next few days, and Qatar is a party to this negotiation. He will meet with President Trump. What is the narrative around his treatment? Will Israel try to, because Israel left him to die, full stop. They left him to die, right? Will they say, well, he was really poorly treated? I think that's kind of on you. Also, if you left him there, that's also on the Zionist government. Go ahead.
Well, we've reported multiple times that these hostages have not been important to the Israeli government. Full stop. And that is why you have massive amounts of protests in the street of Tel Aviv.
Yes.
Because the release of these hostages has not been important to the Benjamin Netanyahu regime. The moment all of those hostages are released and this war ends, Benjamin Netanyahu is out of power. Those aren't my words. Those are multiple words of high-ranking officials who know and study this very, very deeply and have pointed out that he has been hanging on by tenterhooks. If this war ends, Netanyahu is out of power. He's not well-liked. And you even had those of like Ehud Olmert, who's basically running against him, saying this, that the whole problem is not with Hamas, it's not with Hezbollah. The former prime minister of Israel saying the main problem is Netanyahu. Listen to this.
I will say it. The real enemy that we have is not Iran, which is an enemy. It's not Hezbollah, which is an enemy. It's not Hamas, which is an enemy. The real enemy is from within. The messianic, crazy, extreme groups of Israelis that think that they can kick out the Palestinians and annex the territories. I'm fighting against them, I'm campaigning against them, and I think that this is incumbent upon the Israeli government and Netanyahu. Unfortunately, Netanyahu depends on them politically to the extent that he closes his eyes and he allows them to do things which are totally intolerable and unacceptable.
What I appreciate so much about that is the inability to reduce things to a binary. So a lot of times if you speak out against the Israeli government, you're accused of supporting Hamas. Obviously, that's not the case. You can wish for peace without supporting what Hamas has done, what they stand for, anything like that. So, yeah, again,
Spanish Fly is such a troll. I love this. Redacted siding with Hamas. When did we side with a terrorist organization?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that didn't happen on our show at all. I don't know if you've been paying attention, but what we've been talking about is the demon Benjamin Netanyahu, who's being edged out of this entire conversation. I think the writing is on the wall. I think President Trump knows that. I think you have members of the Trump administration that know that. But you're seeing the same playing card all being played out here. And this is exactly what Zionists are doing right now, coming out to slam President Trump for edging out. Just read Twitter over the past 48 hours. Like, we know what you're doing here, J.D. Vance. We know what you're doing here, President Trump. You're basically edging out Israel. You're throwing Israel under the bus in all of this. Mark Levin, who, here's a Zionist. He absolutely wants war, and he's a warmonger. He absolutely wants war with Iran. Says, I believe the Saudis and the Qataris plan to pressure our country for a Palestinian state or something akin to it during this trip. For Qatar, it means a permanent terrorist state. It will continue to fund to destroy Israel. Remember, Qatar is a close ally of Iran's and has spent billions on Hamas, the Taliban, and terror groups throughout the world. For the Saudis, they believe it will be a face-saving measure to enable them to join the Abraham Accords. No one has told me this. I'm just watching and observing. So he's like saying, hey, I don't know any info. I'm, part of this Trump administration now. I don't know anything about this.
Oh, he also was observing that there have been found secret Iranian nuclear sites now. He just observed that after almost 2 decades of a full decade of the Obama administration sanctioning them on the assumption that they had nukes and never being able to prove it. All of a sudden now, when Israel starts to lose the narrative, when Israel starts to show its fangs, oh, wait, I found it. My mom went looking for it because no one can find anything unless mom goes looking, and you know it.
Well, and you had Glenn Greenwald coming out, pointing out Mark Levin. He said, here we go. You're going to see Zionists are going to come out of the woodwork right now. They're going to use the same talking points that got us into war in Iraq, so Saddam's weapons of mass destruction. It's the same playbook these neocons have been using for the last 20 years. Don't fall for it. So regardless of how you feel about Israel, you can separate Israel from the corrupt regime that is the Benjamin Netanyahu regime. Okay, I have friends who used to work for Benjamin Netanyahu and have told me personally how corrupt the man is. They don't work for him anymore. They know you can stand with Israel, but you can absolutely abhor the Netanyahu regime. And I think the writing is on the wall. It's going to be very interesting over the next few days to see what President Trump does in the Middle East with this trip. Mm-hmm. And again, it's one of those things where the United States was saying, we want this hostage back. We're going to negotiate to get it done. Israel is stepping in our way. It's getting in our way. They do not want these hostages released because hostages being released means it could potentially mean an end to this conflict, an end to this war, and therefore the Netanyahu government would crumble.
Well, you see it, though. Now there's a sense of urgency by President Netanyahu. Over the weekend, he spoke of his plan to destroy the Gaza Strip. But this is a quote from him. But the problem as he sees it is that not enough host countries will take the displaced civilians. Here's a quote. We are destroying more and more homes. You just say that, Yeah.
Well, by the way, we should point out 4 days ago or 5 days ago, Netanyahu said we will occupy all of Gaza.
Right.
And the Trump administration was like, wait a minute. No. So we are going to step in and try to negotiate actually having peace talks and make sure with Iran on the nuclear deal. We're not going to use you in this conversation. Also, we're going to negotiate the end and release of our own hostages without you. So this was I think that could have been the moment when Netanyahu comes out and says, we will occupy all of Gaza basically in perpetuity. And the Trump administration is like, what? Well, come on. Whoa. Really? This is going to happen? I think that could have been the catalyst moment. I don't know. Let us know what you think in the comments.
Well, let me finish this quote because I can't say that. But I said it. So here's what he said. We are destroying more and more homes and Gazans have nowhere to return to. The only inevitable outcome will be the wish of Gazans to emigrate outside of the Gaza Strip. And so his problem is that there are not enough host countries to take them. Israel, even though there's innocent civilians, Israel, it's a non grata. They can't go there, right? So here's a little bit of a thought exercise. Let's pretend that every resident of the Gaza Strip said, okay, well, we're going to live in Cyprus or whatever. Would Israel still pursue them in another place? Obviously not. It's not the people they want, it's the land, clearly. All right.
Yeah. No. And Linda says on in our chat, in our YouTube chat, she says, Redacted is not anti-Semitic. No, I mean, of course not. They and we, meaning she, Linda as well, are anti-Zionist. Will you people please educate yourselves about this, please? I think, no, our chat room is very... I
appreciate you saying that.
But our chat room is very educated on this. There might be a few people that don't understand the difference, but seriously, just educate yourself on that. Very
and
clear.
Absolutely... Our kids went to a diplomatic school. We know a lot of Israeli diplomats. We don't want this murderous reputation to affect innocent people who have nothing to do with this, right? We want this is fostering anti-Semitism because you meet a Jewish person in the world and you think they must be okay with genocide. This is how it's affecting them in the world, right? It's not right. It shouldn't be this way. And it has to end for it to happen.
And friend of the show, Glenn Greenwald, who is Jewish and a journalist, saying, as an American citizen, you have the right as an American citizen to say that you don't want your U.S. tax dollars going to killing innocent people, killing children, killing women. Yes. Oh, you could justify and say, oh, they're terrorists, killing Hamas. I don't want my American tax dollars going to kill anybody. So as an American citizen, I don't want any bombs going into these bunkers, hitting these civilian hospitals, any of that. I don't want any of that. It's the same thing in Ukraine.
But what do you make of the fact that because, I mean, you think of the headlines that we've experienced, for instance, when the Israeli military killed those 15 medics that had their lights on and they said, oh, they were being aggressive. We didn't, and then when the video came out, they said, well, it was just a mistake. And the headline from the BBC was Israel, admits something. Well, no, it's not that they have admitted anything. They were caught lying. Why is the media all of a sudden reporting on reality?
I don't know. That's the big question to me. What do you guys think about this? So over the past 48 hours, the Trump administration is distancing themselves from the demon that is Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, he is Satan by all accounts. And the Israeli people have been protesting by the tens of thousands against this guy. So I think the writing is on the wall of the fall of this demon in Israel. And maybe the Israeli people can have a government that is not aligned with Netanyahu and that party. So you have that over the past 48 hours, the Trump administration distancing themselves. Then you have multiple mainstream media publications, which are never on the side of Trump, right? Financial Times, The Guardian, and others coming out with headlines on how we in the West should be ashamed of ourselves for not having called attention to the ethnic cleansing that's been taking place in Gaza. Why do you think that is? Like something has shifted and I'm not sure exactly what it is.
We, the West, is just the way you reported it. The rest of us have a pretty stinking clear conscience.
And why are you blaming? Yeah, why are you blaming us? Like we've been reporting it from the very beginning here at Redacted. Like we've been very.
And in fact, social media is pretty clear on who the aggressors here. So I think they're only reporting on themselves. You can't even blame the American people for it.
Or are they also blaming like the Biden administration was quiet? I mean, maybe they're blaming the collective. I don't know.
It's we, the elites. Really weird. I suppose we, the Biden administration and the media. But for the most part, the collective we is pretty not okay with this.
Yeah. Like, I don't think you can be against a terrorist group called Hamas. You can be against brutally killing random people like what Hamas did on October 7th. But you can also be against an ethnic cleansing and a genocide, wiping out women and children, killing tens of thousands of civilians. You can also be against those things.
If you were going to rewind the clock, you can be against kidnapping Palestinians and graping them without a G. Long before October 7th, we were against that too.
Videra Kerr in our Rumble chat says, Israel is not ruled from within Israel. They are ruled from global bankers, mostly in London, on the London Square Mile.
Okay.
The banking cabal. Absolutely.
We'll look into that. I went down a banking cabal rabbit hole last night. That's why the newsletter was so late. About the banking cabal that killed Pope John Paul I. Do you know about this? Do you want to go down this rabbit hole with me? Because it kept me up really late. I didn't know about it because it happened when I was 1 month old. But that's some stuff. Are we going to do that? Let's do that together. Okay, I'm going to read the book. We're going to get back to this. But I want to know what you know if you've already known this.
Surveyor of Bear says IDF killed a lot more than Hamas did on October 7th. That's been well documented, yes. Davey says, don't buy it. A false flag incoming. Again, whenever I see this stuff, I always smell false flags. So like, what kind of a false flag? The media is now calling out Israel. Like something is really fishy here. Trump is turning away from the Netanyahu regime. Like, I don't know. I smell a fish. I smell something funny. I smell something funky. All right.
Okay. The Pope book, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this together. Name of the book is called In God's Name by David Yallop. It was an instant hit in 1984. I was in kindergarten, so I missed it. But I'm not going to miss it now. Yeah, we're coming back around to this. So let me know if you're in. You're in or you're in. You're on Redacted, so you're in. You have to be in on all conspiracies. That's why you came here. All right, let's shift gears to talk about immigration in the United Kingdom. Do we dare do the ad before? What do you think?
Why wouldn't we?
Because we didn't have the elements earlier. But okay, before we do that, Clayton has something to tell you about our friends over at Soul.
I love Soul. I'm telling you what, we're not big drinkers and we're not, we're not big wine drinkers. And we have from time to time, but I'm telling you what, I'm a big fan of these guys at getsoul.com. Just go over there and check them out. Okay. And you get 30% off your order. I've been telling everyone about their out of office drinks. They also have some gummies as well. But I'm telling you what, it's a good vibes, nice, light, just kind of great feeling at night. You want to have just like a little adult beverage at night, but you don't want to feel hungover the next day. Sometimes you just need a little something, it's like on a Friday night, you want to enjoy the afternoon or enjoy the evening. I'm telling you, that's where Soul comes in. They're hemp-derived THC and CBD products designed to boost your mood, help you unwind. Their best-selling out-of-office gummies were designed to provide a mild, relaxing, just feeling, boost your mood, enhance creativity, relaxation. But their out-of-office drinks are fantastic. Really love them. You can try their watermelon blend. They're alcohol-free. They're refreshing. They're just relaxing. Perfect for like a summer afternoon, sitting by the pool or something like that, or just kicking back. Big fan of these guys. Plus, Soul has many other amazing wellness products with or without THC, including a variety of their gummies. Capsules can improve your sleep, stress, pain, focus, bloating, all of it. Just go there and check them out. Just try it. I'm just telling you, you're going to thank me later. Go to getsoul.com. Use the code Redacted. That's getsoul.com. Use the promo code Redacted. Get 30% off. Get a good night's sleep, or just try one of their out-of-office drinks. They're delicious. I'm telling you, really, really good stuff. All right.
The chat is, a lot of people already know about this John Paul bit.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that.
The smiling Pope.
And some are asking, what are the books we read? We both are on Goodreads, which I know is owned by Amazon. Don't judge. So if you'd like to see the books that we're reading there, it's just Clayton Morris and Natalie Morris on Goodreads.
I am reading a thick-ass book, right? It's like 700 pages on Mao. If you really want to understand the barbarity of Mao Zedong in China, it's painful. It's painful to read, and it's excellently written. Amazing work. But just to understand the barbarity of communism, to understand the famine, the forced, the long march, like all of these pieces of Mao's history and what he did to just millions and millions of Chinese. It's hard to believe that it wasn't even 100 years ago, this kind of barbarity that exists. So it's important to understand that as you have a lot of people on the left who love to praise socialism and praise communism. Really? Maybe you should read this book. You should read this book to understand the barbarity of it all, with Stalin's help funneling weapons and material and support for Mao, and just how cunning and basically what a coward the guy is. An absolute coward the guy is, who his father was really a capitalist. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I'm just fascinated by this part. Like, his father was able to buy land because he worked hard, and was able to have a family farm because he worked hard, and he was able to provide. And he actually rose up from the bottom because in many ways he was a capitalist.
But he denounced his land-owning family when he decided, that Mao did.
Mao, oh yeah.
Yes.
And so he eschewed hard work. Like, go out in the field and help with the farm, son. And he was like, he couldn't stand to get his hands dirty. Like, to me, it's like emblematic of like communism and socialism. And here his father was, by all accounts, a capitalist.
Yeah.
And was able to bring like wealth and prosperity to his family. And here's this little piece of garbage coward who didn't do any hard work, gave up his family, like basically didn't want anyone having land. It's really fascinating. It's a good read, and it's a long one. So anyway.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's not nice.
It's actually the opposite of
it's
nice.
It's not nice. It's the opposite of that.
Speaking of nice, I finished a book this weekend called Bright-Sided: How Positive Thinking is Undermining America. And I'm having an existential crisis about it because I didn't realize how communist New Age commitment to positive psychology is. And now I'm going to be cranky again. I've been given permission to not do that super positive mumbo jumbo. And we're going to do that.
Love that.
So you shall all be prepared. No, but it's fantastic book. Amazing.
Someone in the chat says, stop spreading lies about Stalin. Trojan says, stop saying lies about Stalin. Go to Russia and learn the true about him. Learn the true about him. Well, all I said was that Stalin was helping the Red Army, which he was, and he was helping to funnel material and weapons across the border. That absolutely is the case. So that's all I said about it. So that's not a lie.
If you'd like to refute that, then come for Clayton
that's
personally.
That's all I said. But yeah, feel free to come for me personally. But okay. All right.
All right. Well, what is happening in the United Kingdom after years of flooding their borders with illegal migrants? UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says this is not a good idea. Okay. Do you realize that the UK government arrested people for saying that mass migration is leading to violence and social decay? But now this fool is free to say it from his pulpit. Watch.
Let me put it this way. Nations depend on rules, fair rules. Sometimes they're written down, often they're not. But either way, they give shape to our values, guide us towards our rights, of course, but also our responsibilities, the obligations we owe to each other. Now, in a diverse nation like ours, and I celebrate that, these rules become even more important. Without them, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly. That's why some of the policies in this white paper go back nearly 3 years. Why I told the Labour Party conference, taking back control is a Labour argument. And why, most importantly of all, inward migration is already falling with this government.
Okay, that's weird that he is saying this after his own government. I mean, I guess this is the way of it in the United Kingdom, is the prime minister can casually do what they'd like have parties during COVID, meanwhile arresting others for doing that same thing. They can say now that illegal immigration is a problem. They can say we need to have rules, we need to preserve our culture, but people have been arrested for saying exactly that thing on social media, that it's kind of worth it to be British. That's what we are. We have a culture. We have a language. We would like to maintain that. I mean, how is it? What? How? Why? Why now? I don't understand why this about face, other than he has been faced with the social decay of merging too many people like the Tower of Babel in one place. So now some of the rules, and we're going to get Jim Ferguson to talk about this tomorrow, who's in the UK and has been warning about this. Some of the rules include you must assimilate. You must learn English. Many countries already have these rules. You must learn the language of the country you're trying to get the passport to. So why, Clayton? Why now?
I don't know. And it's the same weird thing where these guys run on a certain platform, like Mark Carney in Canada. They say one thing, and then as soon as they're in, they're sort of pivoting. He praised President Trump last week for his stance on immigration and closing the border. Like, I don't exactly understand it. Again, there's got to be some weird shift here, because how do you just realize that your country is collapsing under the weight of illegal immigration? I mean, just look at Scotland, look at Ireland, look all around, look on the streets, look at the crime where girls are just walking through parks in the middle of the UK and they're just raped, they're attacked on a regular basis. This is happening all across Europe. There must be something. There must be something after President Trump meets with Keir Starmer last week.
Yeah.
And they have this agreement. They put this new trade agreement in place together, and they've sort of aligned themselves in a way. I can't help but wonder if something came out of those talks about their immigration status.
With who?
With Trump last week, with this with the UK trade deal. If there was some sort of backroom dealing about putting your foot down about illegal immigration.
Or do you think he just was embarrassed that the United States is making an effort to preserve its culture and language, and now the United Kingdom is not?
I don't think they feel any embarrassment. Do these guys ever feel embarrassment? They've gone through so many things. They've done ridiculous things. They've literally clamping down on free speech in this country. If you post memes about certain things, you could be arrested.
Yeah.
I mean, J.D. Vance told him right to his face about this, and he stood his ground and pushed back on this issue. It's been a total lie. So I don't know. I can't make heads of this. I also don't understand, again, how the West is suddenly coming around on a couple of issues over the past 72 hours.
After their utter commitment to talking nonsense, to pretending that it's okay. Over the weekend, a fellow YouTuber, Paul Joseph Watson, uploaded a video called Manchester is a SH hole. And some of the data about Manchester, and I love that he played Life is a Pigsty by Morrissey, one of my favorite songs. Some of the data is that it's like triple the amount in the last decade of people are carrying blades, knives, just to knife each other. Like, this is what life is like. So did it take this to get all the way there? I mean, I guess we don't have to go all the way to apocalyptic, but why now? So again, this is something we're going to talk to Jim Ferguson about tomorrow. And again, the language and the sort of the top-down policing of thought. For instance, who was it in the royal family? One of the senior royals that was clearly not Harry and Meghan, was at a diplomatic event and asked somebody with black skin, "Where are you from?" and got called a racist. And they said, "Well, I'm English." And they said, "Yes, but where's your family from?" And that person took such offense to the idea of being asked where their roots were, because they said, "See, the royal family is super racist." So you see a black person and you think, "Oh, but where do you hail from?" Right? Because English people have not seen the sun. They don't have dark pigment. That's an offensive question. This has been a top-down, narrative, is that English people do not look white, full stop, and we don't have our own culture.
You can't have your own culture anymore. I mean, people are so offended. It's ridiculous. And you want to look at how has immigration in the past 10 years, has it been good for Britain? So a recent YouGov poll shows overwhelming majority of Britons think that it's been bad for their country. So maybe they're reading maybe they're reading the awful British tea leaves and realizing that, you know what, most actual Brits don't want illegal immigration anymore. They don't want all of these refugees pouring into their countries.
You don't even have to be a wealthy country to not want illegal immigration. Portugal is now deporting illegal immigrants because people don't like it. They like to have their safety of their own nationality. What a novel thought.
And it's also massively increased unemployment. So then you have all of these people who are unemployed. Just look at the Danish people. I mean, this is so you had in Denmark, most, husbands and wives both work, right? And so when you pay into this big system, you're paying all these taxes and you get universal health care. The way that you're able to get this universal health care is because both families are working and they're pouring into the system. So then you had all of these illegal immigrants, of course, who've poured into that particular country. And then on top of it, now they're, the wife is staying home. And so they're seeing women at home walking strollers down the street in Denmark. And this is totally at odds with the way that culture operates. But they're also getting free healthcare. So now the woman is at home with a child, this immigrant who's poured into this country, and the husband and wife who have been there for 40 years, both work. So it totally upends the culture. It totally upends society. And so they're taxing a lot of the healthcare system in these countries, from Scotland to Ireland to the UK, all across Europe. This is happening, and they can't afford it. And you're supposed to, you're a xenophobe. You're a xenophobe if you oppose this. No, your country is collapsing under the weight of all of this.
Yeah.
And even
look at Sweden. Do you want to be Sweden? Oh, yes, the Pope
spoke about this. The new Pope, Leo.
This was a soundbite from before, I believe, he was elected. But he said illegal immigration is a problem, but we need to give basic decency and respect to every human being. He has in one sentence said what no leader has been able to say. And that's how we feel about it. That's how any reasonable person should feel about it. So anyhow, all right, we're going to talk about reasonable drug prescription prices because the Trump administration. So I know it says there on your rundown that we're going to talk about illegal migration in the United States, and we were going to have a guest. But again, I told you we had technical difficulties, so we are unable. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to come back tomorrow.
But a bunch of people in the chat saying that apparently Zoom was under some big cyber attack today.
Oh.
Zoom, a lot of people, there was like a big power outage in Europe. So there's apparently a lot of technical issues today.
We will not take it personally.
Yeah,
and,
so there's a lot of, so Zoom was down. There was
Yeah.
all sorts of issues today. And I know a lot of different shows had issues with this today.
But we showed up, Clayton. I'm proud of us. We're doing the thing. We did the research, so
Hey,
we're
good
here
to
to
see
talk.
that, like the 40,000 of you that are watching right now. We really appreciate it. And, we apologize we had a bunch of guests lined up on the show today, but because of all these technical issues, we apologize.
But we're here.
We're here.
Okay, so I do, though, want to skip to the last segment that we had planned here about Trump's prescription plan because, number one, Democrats should eat shit because they promised this and they never delivered. It was a Democratic promise. Also, they tanked it when Trump tried to do this during his first term. You may not remember, but we did. So we're going to go over what might happen when Big Pharma takes this back to the courts because they do not want this. And if you have seen the movie The Fugitive, you know how desperate. I know that's fiction, but again, the idea that Big Pharma may get desperate here if they can't surcharge you for Tylenol.
People saying the London Underground had a whole blackout today as well.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then you had the big blackout in Newark, New Jersey the other day with, again, these systems that run on, it's like there's like a hamster on a little wheel that runs and keeps these things going.
Right.
Oh.
Okay. Before we talk about this prescription plan business, I want to tell you about our friends over at American Financing because the Federal Reserve last week kept interest rates the same, which means we don't know what the heck our economy is going to do. So if you are still living on high interest debt on your credit cards or what have you, you should call our friends over at American Financing. So what they do is they have salary consultants and they can look at your assets and they can look at your liabilities and they can help you decide if you should leverage your assets, which for most of us, that's our main home. Should you leverage that asset to stop digging yourself into the red, but instead building your family's wealth. This is not something that's for everybody, but they can teach you if it is or not. And again, it's just one of the many tools in your financial toolbox that wealthy people do all the time. They leverage their assets. They don't just hoard and hold. That's not how you build wealth. So call them at 866-890-8434. That's 866-890-8434. Or visit AmericanFinancing.net/redacted. Again, this is just something, set aside an hour, study it, ask the questions, and see if it can help you get out of debt. So again, that's AmericanFinancing.net/redacted, or call 866-890-8434. All right. Well, the White House and RFK Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, announced a new plan to reduce prescription drug prices by up to 80%, but don't get excited because they've tried this before and Big Pharma went to the courts and stopped it, and Joe Biden canceled it altogether. So this is not new. What's new is that maybe they can implement this time. So let's study it before we start getting excited about affordable medicine. This means that they are going to use something called most favored nation prices, meaning that Americans should pay the lowest cost of prescription medicine like they do abroad. So here is what the executive order looks like. Do we have that? I can hold for a second. Okay, I'll show you the order in just a second. So what it says, not American Financing. Sorry, we're a little behind. Okay, I'll just keep telling you what this is. What it says that if the government comes up with rules to make sure Americans pay the same low prices, there it is, not just with Medicaid and Medicare like the last order, but for everyone, even people with private health insurance or prescription plans or cash pay. Now, here's one of many examples. I had a friend who had dual residency in Portugal and the United States, and that friend was battling cancer. Her doctors prescribed a cancer drug that she had to take 2 or 3 times that was not covered by insurance, and it was upwards of $1,500. And she said, well, then I'm going to go and take it in Portugal. Since I live there part of the year, then I'll pay just a few €100 for this drug rather than thousands. And this is a similar story that people who live abroad know. Actually, I can pay the actual prices of drugs if I leave the United States. But in the United States, it will be surged. President Trump had a similar story about his friend who he says it was on the fat drug. We're presuming that's Ozempic. Watch.
And I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called me up, and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on? He said, so I checked. And it's the same box, made in the same plant, by the same company. It's the identical pill that I buy in New York. And here I'm paying $88 in London. In New York, I'm paying $1,300. Now, this is a great businessman, but he's not familiar with this crazy situation that we have. But he was stunned. But it was just one of those stories. And I brought it up with the drug companies, represented by somebody who's very, very smart, good person too. And we argued about it for about half hour. And then finally he just said, because they can't justify it, he just said, look, you got me. You got me. I can no longer they've been justifying this crap for years. They said, oh, it's research and development. Well, I said, well, research and development, other countries should pay research and development too. It's for their benefit.
All right. So this is a very common refrain for people who've lived abroad. They know that anytime you leave the United States, those countries do not allow price surging of medical care and pharmaceuticals because, especially when insurance is involved. Here's an invoice from, I just was able to scroll through when we lived abroad. My daughter had an ophthalmology checkup and the exam cost 38 euros total. So that's about $40. And my insurance paid 13 of it. I had to pay 15. That was the price. They didn't surge it because I had insurance. Plus my insurance was 2,000 euro per year for all 5 of us. And healthcare was excellent when we lived in Portugal because they cannot surge it just because you have insurance. They pay the actual price of it. That was the price of a 15-minute eye checkup, and the doctor got paid. It's crazy. So same thing with the cost of drugs. Europeans pay reasonable prices. Americans don't because big pharma can surge those prices. That's why they fought so hard, the insurance industry, against the Trump administration for Trump 1.0, his first term, to make them disclose hospital prices. They lost that one in court as well. They don't want you to know how much they surge prices, but we know now. So will this executive order stop that? Well, it may succeed this time. Because it's not aimed at medical care. We're just talking about pharma right now, but it's aimed at all consumers, not just Medicaid and Medicare. So it's for all of us. So that's encouraging. Let's look at what the Trump administration did during their first term. In September of 2020, President Trump signed a similar executive order. But look at the date here, September 13th, 2020. So this was just before Trump was seeking re-election. Why did it not go into effect? Because Big Pharma sued. Here's the lawsuit. Again, look at the date. The lawsuit says the Trump administration doesn't have the right to do this. It will cut into our profits. It will delay medicines for people. But the date of this lawsuit is December of 2020. The Trump administration was already outgoing by this time. They didn't fight it very hard because they knew that they could not see it through. And then President Biden, one of his first executive orders, rescinded it altogether. So the Trump administration has tried to do this before. It's the Democrats who took it away and said, actually, no, we need to let Big Pharma surge their prices. The Democrats. Okay, so here is RFK Jr. today talking about how this is a failed Democratic policy. They could have been victory lapping this all along during the Biden administration, and they failed us.
This is an extraordinary day. This is an issue that, I grew up in the Democratic Party, and every major Democratic leader for 20 years has been making this promise to the American people. This was the fulcrum of Bernie Sanders' runs for presidency, that he was going to eliminate this discrepancy between Europe and the United States. But as it turns out, none of them were doing it. It's one of these promises that politicians make to their constituents, knowing that they'll never have to do it. And the reason they'll never have to do it is because they know that Congress is controlled in so many ways by the pharmaceutical industry. There's at least one pharmaceutical lobbyist for every congressman, every senator in Capitol Hill, and every member of the Supreme Court. By some estimates, 3. Pharmaceutical companies, the industry itself, spends 3 times what the next largest lobbyist spends on lobbying. So this was an issue that people talked about, but nobody wanted to do anything, because it was radioactive. They knew you couldn't get it by Congress. We now have a president who is a man of his word, who has the courage. President Trump was taking money from the pharmaceutical industry, too. I think they gave you $100 million. But he can't be bought.
I found that really interesting admission that President Trump is still funded by Big Pharma, but he's doing it anyway. They will sue him. Absolutely, they will revive their case that was dropped by Joe Biden and say, you can't do this. But there is some maybe reason to think positive here that the Trump administration could win. Number one, President Trump didn't do this until the last few weeks of his last administration, so he didn't have it in him to fight. He couldn't have anyway. It would have been a waste of time. Now he's doing it quite early in his administration, so he will have the bandwidth to back it up in court. In the first lawsuit, Big Pharma argued that the rule effectively amends Medicare status without congressional approval, which is beyond the agency's power. But Congress, actually, given that it's Republican-controlled, could vote to put some teeth into this and amend Medicare. That's possible. I mean, I don't know if they will. But it's possible. Republicans haven't shown a huge appetite for lowering the cost of prescription drugs and sticking it to Big Pharma. But maybe if President Trump is their leader, they'll do it too. And then the last point that I thought maybe is that HHS is run by a lawyer. RFK Jr. has extensive experience suing Big Pharma and the medical industry. So if he crafts the rulemaking process by which they set prescription drugs, and he looks at what their arguments were from the first litigation, maybe it will be more defensible in a court of law. But they will fight. I mean,
of course
this is 100% speculation, but I would take it to the bank. They will fight.
Well, they did. And because, judges blocked this before, unelected bureaucrats and judges, of course, bowed to this before, they're run by Big Pharma. They take their money from these people. They're all these media organizations, these judges, all of these people have so much money flowing into them from Big Pharma. Of course, they're going to stand in the way. And to me, again, people want to understand this. If you want to understand socialism, look at Big Pharma and the lobbyist power that artificially set these drug prices massively higher than they would in the UK and other places. That's socialism. They're picking winners and losers through the government. The government, if this wasn't so, if we wanted it to be a capitalist society, we want this to be an open and fair playing field, then allow these companies to compete on the global scale.
Right.
Allow these companies to compete. If you've got the best
We have anti-monopoly laws that is supposed to prevent them from having a monopoly on the pharmaceuticals and then price gouging us. But they do it anyway because it's allowed in the United States. And I see this commenter in the Rumble chat saying, oh, no, the government should not be involved in price setting. Okay, but the government is allowing price gouging where other governments do not. And who benefits is people who live abroad who get reasonable prices for their drugs, not a surged price, not a $900 epidural.
I mean, again, it already is happening. The government is already setting these prices. This is socialism in the United States. There are certain sectors of the government that pick winners and losers, right? Like ethanol, for crying out loud. Ethanol, corn subsidy, the government is picking to subsidize this garbage stuff that we throw in our gasoline. If the market was allowed to settle this, no one would be shoving this in their gasoline. But it's because government chose winners and losers in the same way that they're doing with the pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. And as someone else pointed out in our chat room, Fox News and MSNBC and CNN shouldn't be brought to you by Pfizer. All of these segments, we should be able to decouple pharmaceutical advertising from mainstream media, especially when mainstream broadcast channels are receiving federal government money already, taxpayer dollars.
Right.
Think about it, their money would dry up massively. Almost every commercial that they run, if you watch Fox News in the afternoon or something, you watch MSNBC in the afternoon, it's all old people that are watching that stuff. Yeah. Right. They're 75 years old. And so it's all pharmaceutical ads.
Right. Yep.
So they would lose all of their advertising. They wouldn't be able to stand up anymore.
So let us know what you think is going to happen. I mean, we have to watch it because if something like this requires congressional approval and President Trump leads the charge to get us reasonably priced goods and Republican lawmakers don't follow suit and they tank it, we got to watch this. Right? We have to keep the awareness because maybe we don't know that President Trump already tried this during his first term and it was rescinded by Joe Biden. We can't look away. So stay with us on this. We're going to watch it. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us with Redacted today. And again, we want to apologize that we had so many technical difficulties, but we showed up, we did a show, and we're really glad to be here with you and be in conversation with you. We are also in conversation with you through the Redacted newsletter, and so we can communicate with you that way. If you head on over to redacted.inc, it will have links to the original source material for a lot of the things we're going to talk about in the show. And it's totally free. free. But before we say goodbye, we want to make sure that you hear about our friends over at Lear Capital, because if you had been investing in gold all this time that we've been telling you to do so, you'd be a pretty happy camper by now, because we make the argument again and again that this is a hard asset, that it has real world value, unlike the US dollar, which is based on a belief system and controlled by a cabal. That is the Federal Reserve. Gold is not. So in just 12 months, gold has surged more than $3,200 an ounce. Now, Goldman Sachs, the same experts who predicted the rise, are saying that gold could reach $4,500 in the next year. So what's behind this historic move? Well, the fact that global currencies are a perversion of market forces and falling, like most sensible economists have told us that they would. So big money is in a panic. That's why banks and billionaires are buying gold in record amounts. And Lear Capital can teach you how to get started. You can buy gold outside your IRA. You can buy gold inside your IRA. They can help you own shares of gold. They can help you learn what kind of bullion to buy. I called them up, totally cold. They didn't know who I was or anything. And I asked some pretty dumb questions, and they had all kinds of patience to teach me how to do this. And you can too. So head on over to LearRedacted.com or call them for your free guide. That's 800-613-3557. You can receive up to $15,000 in free bonus medals with a qualified purchase. So again, that's LearRedacted.com or call them 800-613-3557.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, gold dropped. It was down about 2% today. So it's amazing that it was under $3,000 an ounce just a few months ago. Now it's at $3,234. Yeah. So, but I forget who has is it UBS that has their price target for gold of like $4,500 by the end of this year? That's UBS. That's not us saying that. And silver still about half of its all-time high. So yeah, both. I'm just looking at the numbers today. So even if like a little bit of a pullback, we continue to add to our portfolio. Anyway, just wanted to put those numbers out there.
All right. Thank you for joining us today on Redacted. We'll be back tomorrow. I hope you will be too. Thank you so much.